drum and donut. D for drum and donut. D for drum and donut. E, 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 E for elephant and egg. E for elephant and egg. E for elephant and egg. F, 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 F for flower and fish. F for flower and fish. F for flower and fish. G, 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 G for girl and gift. G for girl and gift. G for girl and gift. H, 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 H for heart and hamburger. H for heart and hamburger. H for heart and hamburger. I for ice and ice cream. I for ice and ice cream. I for ice and ice cream. J, 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 J for jelly and jam. J for jelly and jam. J for jelly and jam. K, 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 K for kettle and kite. K for kettle and kite. K for kettle and kite. L, 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 L for lollipop and leaf. L for lollipop and leaf. L for lollipop and leaf. M, 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 M for moon and mouse. M for moon and mouse. M for moon and mouse. N, N, M, N for necklace and net. N for necklace and net. N for necklace and net. O, 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 O for owl and orange. O for owl and orange. O for owl and orange. P, 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 P for pencil and panda. P for pencil and panda. P for pencil and panda. Q, 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 Q for queen and quail. Q for queen and quail. Q for queen and quail. R, 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 R for rainbow and rabbit. R for rainbow and rabbit. R for rainbow and rabbit. S, 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 S for star and spider. S for star and spider. S for star and spider. T, 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 T for tomato and tree. T for tomato and tree. T for tomato and tree. U, 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 U for umbrella and uniform. U for umbrella and uniform. U for umbrella and uniform. V, 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 V for volcano and violin. V for volcano and violin. V for volcano and violin. V for W, 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 W for whistle and watermelon. W whistle and watermelon. W whistle and watermelon. X, 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 X for xylophone and X-ray. X for xylophone and X-ray. X for xylophone and X-ray. Y, 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 Y for yogurt and yellow. Y for yogurt and yellow. Y for yogurt and yellow. Z, Z, Z,